Hey there. Welcome back to Nothing But Anime. It's time for part 11 of our What If Deku Had Powerful Weapon Quirk series. If you're having fun with the content, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Let's jump right in and see what happens next. After a quick soak, 1A filed out into the clearing that held the main lodge. Izawa-sensei stood there with his hands behind his back, satisfied with their response time. Good. Being able to clean up quickly is an essential skill for a hero. Now, the reason we're holding this training camp is for something not entirely beyond our control. After Todoroki's broadcast, there's been a rise in villainous activity, and the HPSC wants more boots on the ground. As such, they're allowing first years to take the provisional license exam, and they've made it mandatory for first years at UA, both 1A and 1B. I'd rather you wait until second year like normal, but as it stands, we've got to make sure you're ready for the exam in the fall. Izuku sighed. Wonderful. So, what's the plan? Simply put, intensive quirk training. He tossed a familiar-looking ball to Katsuki. You got 705.2 meters at the start of the year, right? The blonde nodded wordlessly. Try throwing it again. Katsuki grinned and wound up a pitcher's throw, his arm coming forward and letting off a massive explosion. The ball soared through the air, but it fell back to earth much quicker than Izuku had expected. Izawa-sensei grunted and held up a familiar device. 709.6 meters. Mutters rose up from the class, only to fall silent when Izawa-sensei cleared his throat. Here's the thing, you've all made leaps and bounds in the past few months, but most of that has been technique and physical prowess. We haven't spent all that much time developing your quirks themselves. This training camp will rectify that. Quirks are like muscles, the more you strain them, the faster they grow. As such, this camp will be spent pushing your quirks to their limits. Of course, going with the muscle analogy, you'll also have breaks during the evening to let your quirks recover. Izuku nodded. Makes sense. You tear your muscle fibers to make them grow back stronger, but if you keep tearing them every day, they don't have the opportunity to heal, and you won't make any progress. Izawa-sensei nodded. Exactly. Since this is UA, expect it to be plus ultra, but I have faith that you'll get through it. Don't let me down. Get a good night's rest, hell starts tomorrow. Hell was accurate. By the time dinner arrived on the first day, Izuku wanted nothing more than to collapse on his sleeping bag and clock out. Izawa-sensei and the Pussycats had put together various exercises designed to strain each student's quirk individually. Katsuki was standing next to an oil barrel filled with hot water to activate his sweat glands and make him sweat harder, which he would then detonate all at once to acclimate his shoulders to the recoil of his explosions. There was another oil barrel full of water that went unused which, according to Pixie Bob, would have been for Todoroki's training regiment. Zero knelt on the edge of a cliff and was continuously producing his tape from both elbows, improving his capacity, speed, and strength. Ochako was constantly running up and then tumbling down the incline leading to said cliff to decrease her body's reaction to her quirk. She was sharing a portable toilet with Aoyama, who was constantly firing to increase his body's durability against his naval laser. Kirishima and Ojiro were sparring, the latter only using his tail against the former's hardened limbs. The idea was that the constant impacts would strengthen both quirks simultaneously. Similarly, Kuda and Hitoshi were increasing the hold of their quirks against each other. Kuda would order the animals to charge at Hitoshi, who would attempt to get them to growl or roar at him to take control of their minds, which was something they discovered he could do after a night of experimenting with Izuku. In addition, Shuji and Hagakure were training together, with the former creating more and more limbs to try to spot the latter. Kaminari was running his electricity through a large battery to try and increase his body's resistance to his quirk, but he was also instructed to constantly switch between concentrating his electricity in his hands and coating his whole body with it to fine-tune his control. Similarly, Fumikage was sitting outside a cave with Dark Shadow scouting inside of it. The goal was for Dark Shadow to gain full control of their emotions in full darkness, and for the pair to improve their capability to communicate telepathically with each other. Sue was climbing up and down a cliff face with her tongue and sticky fingers to work out all of the muscles in her body. She was also producing her paralyzing mucus at various spots on her body to try and improve its efficacy. In a similar vein, Ashido was standing against said cliff face and constantly producing acid, increasing both its potency and her body's resistance to it. Kyuka was standing next to her, stabbing her jacks into increasingly higher and higher points on the cliff to increase the length they could stretch, as well as making the jacks more durable. Ida was simply doing sprints around the large clearing, aiming to increase his Engin's speed while also increasing the time it took for them to overheat. Satu and Izuku were standing at a table filled with food items. Satu was lifting a large dumbbell as he scarfed down slices of cake, in an attempt to both increase his quirk's strength enhancement and decrease its fuel requirement. Izuku was eating high-calorie sweets while constantly producing and discarding various items, attempting to decrease the time it took to make them, increase their durability, decrease the amount of lipids it took to make them, and possibly increase the number he could equip simultaneously. In the evening, after they'd finished training for the day, they were instructed to put together a meal of curry and rice under the Pussycats' guidance. Thankfully, the heroes didn't need to do much guiding, because Izuku and Katsuki quickly took charge and began directing everybody with experience born of several camping trips over the years. As the class dug in, Izuku glanced over at the long table set next to the food truck. He could see that the two ends were covered with crumbs, while the center was jarringly clean. The topic had come up at lunchtime, and Pixie Bob had admitted that the table had been designed to hold a third-person Momo. Izuku felt another spike of guilt drive through his stomach as he thought about it. She could have been here. She and Todoroki could have been with us today if I'd done something. Firm hands grasped him and set him upright on the bench. Katsuki's voice broke through the fog of his mind as he said, I told you. No more self-deprecating. Izuku huffed and leaned forward, crossing his arms on the picnic table and resting his chin on top. Rational brain knows that. Emotional brain can't help but wonder about what-ifs. And rational brain hates emotional brain for being stupid. Aizawa-sensei huffed and ruffled Izuku's hair. Emotions are pretty stupid, I'll give you that much. But Bakugu's got a point. You can't change what happened. All that you can do now is prepare for what will happen next. Got it, problem child? Izuku sighed and nodded. Right, sensei. Shudo crossed his arms and stared down at the lights coming from the forest in the valley below. Disgusting. They laugh and joke as if nothing has changed. As if my absence means nothing. Dabi grunted from behind his kid brother. Or maybe they're trying to cope with your absence. There's no way to know, is there? Shudo huffed. Whatever. It doesn't matter. They won't be feeling anything but the chill of death once I'm through with them. Compress twirled his top hat in his hand. Do not forget, young Terminus, that Shigaraki has ordered that the Midoriya boy be brought to him alive. Shudo scoffed. Your orders, maybe. I'm not part of your Vanguard Action Squad, or whatever you call it. I'm here to exact my own revenge. After all, they were part of the problem. Eraserhead pushed me just as much as Endeavor did, and the rest of the class constantly challenged my superiority. And I don't care if my vengeance gets in the way of your precious orders. If you happen to spirit Midoriya away before I get to him, whatever. He matters little to me. But if I happen to find him before you do, then nothing is going to stop me from killing him. Aside from his own strength, Dabi thought. But I'm not dumb enough to say that out loud while I'm in glacier range. Shudo glared down at the valley below. Soon. My revenge will begin. Starting with all of you. Izuku hummed to himself as he and Katsuki walked through the forest. So, what kind of scares do you think 1B is going to have ready for us? The blonde snorted. Ready for you, more likely. I don't get scared that easily. Izuku smirked. Do I need to remind you about the time I convinced you to watch me play Five Nights at Freddy's? Katsuki shuddered. That fucking game still gives me nightmares. But it's designed to be terrifying. I doubt 1B has anything in that league. Suddenly, there was a rapid-fire thudding sound, and a tree slowly crashed to the ground a few feet from the trail. An ominous wind blew through the trees, quickly accompanied by maniacal cackling. Katsuki said nothing, but his grip on Izuku's arm tightened considerably. Izuku grinned slightly, before scanning the surrounding area. The bushes ahead rustled, when a disembodied head came flying out of the darkness at them. Katsuki shrieked and latched onto Izuku's arm like a koala, hanging there while Izuku stood completely still. The head stopped cackling and started giggling, and Izuku chuckled as he recognized Tokage Setsuna, codenamed Lizardy. Howdy, Tokage pouted. Ah, you could have been at least a little scared. Izuku snorted. I've stared down all of Resident Evil, Dead Space, and FNAF without breaking a sweat. That was puny in comparison. Tokage sighed, her head floating back towards the tree line. Fine, guess I'd better warn the others that they should focus on Blasty. Doesn't get scared easily. Katsuki snarled and raised his right hand threateningly, but Tokage just cackled as her head disappeared into the shadows. Izuku smirked and patted Katsuki on the head as the blonde extracted himself from Izuku's arm. Fine, they get points for shock value. But now I'm prepared for the next one. Izuku rolled his eyes, and they continued along the path. The ominous wind continued blowing, but the two of them steadfastly ignored it, at least up until the point that it began to smell like smoke. Izuku's head whipped up as the horizon began to glow blue, a stark contrast from the dark night sky. Shit, something's gone wrong. Katsuki huffed. Probably a prank from 1B gone bad. Izuku shook his head. Nobody in 1B has a quirk that produces blue fire, not by themselves at least. And the only person who theoretically could is currently stuck at the lodge for remedial lessons. Katsuki's eyes narrowed. Icy Hot's flames aren't blue, as far as I know, so this is someone else. Loud clapping sounded from above, and Izuku and Katsuki whirled on the spot so that they stood back to back. A voice called out, Incredible! Truly, UA raises nothing but the best, both in strength and intelligence. Glancing up, Izuku saw a man dressed in a yellow coat and a top hat with a feather in the brim. His face was covered by an ornate monochrome theater mask, and he held a white cane with a yellow grip in his left hand. I've heard rumors about you, Mr. Compress. Am I right? The villain chuckled, his cane slung over his left wrist. Indeed, peerless heir of the greatest thief of all time. Of course, one cannot survive for very long on his own. As such, the wise thief knows when to make friends. Izuku swore under his breath. You joined up with the League, didn't you? Mr. Compress bowed gracefully. Quite so. However, the League is not alone here tonight. We have been graced by the presence of a new villain, one who insists that he works alone to achieve his goals. One who proclaims himself the end of all heroism. Izuku's eyes narrowed. And where might he be? Mr. Compress sighed dramatically as he twirled his cane in his grip. Oh, I do believe he said something about finding a good vantage point over the entire display so as to more easily find his targets. If you were anyone else in your class, I would suggest finding somewhere to hide. He is merciless and intent on killing anyone who crosses his path. However, given the prowess of the two of you, I would recommend facing him soon to minimize casualties. Katsuki grunted. And why the hell would you care about casualties, you damn villain? Mr. Compress chuckled. My dear boy, I may be a villain, but even I have my standards. Many in our Vanguard Action Squad make it a point not to kill bystanders, but the one who works alone is determined to leave massive amounts of death and destruction in his wake. And sadly, a destroyed Japan does not make a fine stage for us performers. Izuku nodded. Understandable. Though, it would seem there's something you're not telling us. Mr. Compress leaned on his cane, despite standing on a branch several meters off the ground. You see, we technically have orders to bring back a certain student alive. However, said student is one of our best hopes for stopping the lone wolf in our midst. As such, I have decided that I will hold off on his capture until such a time that the destruction of this area has been thwarted, after which I will attempt to fulfill my orders to the best of my ability. Izuku grunted. Shiggy wants his player too. Whatever. He turned to Katsuki. I'll go stop our former classmate. You get back to the lodge and warn the others. He glanced back up at the villain. We'll handle you later. Mr. Compress bowed gracefully. I accept your challenge. Kuda backed up towards the path that led to the lodge as a figure emerged from around the bend in the mountainside. Who the hell are you? What are you doing at my secret hideout? The figure stared down at him. Mouthy little brat, aren't you? No doubt you're getting along swimmingly with that Bakugu bastard. Having fun disrespecting your superiors, boy? Kuda scoffed. They're all stupid, trying to go out and be heroes. They're just gonna get themselves killed. The figure huffed. Well, be happy. I'm not gonna make them wait to be heroes first before they die. You're welcome to watch from up here. Kuda froze. He's gonna kill them? Is this guy a villain? The figure stared at him, and he swallowed nervously. Who are you? Really? After my announcement the other week, I had thought that people would be aware of me. Certainly after I took over UA's press conference. Kuda grumbled. I didn't watch it. UA is stupid. All the heroes are stupid. They just go out and get themselves killed all the time. It's dumb. The villain scoffed. Maybe if you're a weakling, if I had continued as I was, I wouldn't have died. I would have survived and annihilated anyone who stood in my way. I suppose that is still true, only now my wrath will extend to the heroes as well. There was a blur and a gust of wind, and the Midoriya guy was suddenly standing between Kuda and the villain. Pick on someone your own size, Todoroki. Don't take out your problems with your dad on some random kid. The villain, apparently named Todoroki, huffed. Midoriya, how very foolish of you to come directly to me. You'll be the first to die, followed by the rest of the class. Midoriya snorted, and two wooden hammers appeared in his hands as a wooden hog mask appeared on his face. Clearly, you didn't pay attention to my performance during the tournament. Todoroki shrugged. Irrelevant. You cannot possibly hope to match my level of power. Midoriya glanced back at Kuda. Kid, run. Get to Mandalay and let her know that villains are attacking the camp. I'm counting on you. Kuda took a few steps backwards, before turning on his heel and running down the path to the lodge. Why am I listening to him? He's just going to get himself killed like an idiot. Izuku heaved a mental sigh of relief as the kid fled down the path towards the lodge, before focusing his attention back on his former classmate. The two-toned teen huffed. I thought heroes were supposed to keep civilians out of the line of fire, yet you sent him towards my primary target. You're a fool, Midoriya. I'm surprised UA allowed you to stay in the hero course when your intelligence clearly isn't up to par. Izuku scoffed, gripping his hammers tightly. You seem to be operating under the assumption that you're going any farther. I'm stopping your reign of terror before it has a chance to go anywhere. Todoroki sighed, frost forming over the tattered remains of his hero costume. Foolish. My quirk is unstoppable. A weakling like you can't possibly hope to match me. Honestly, UA should have cut the dead weight before the year even began. You and that girl are nothing but hindrances to the school's reputation. Something in Izuku snapped. What? Nearly killing Momo wasn't good enough. You just had to go and insult her when she's in a coma. Huh. Todoroki huffed. Good. She won't be able to get in anyone's way like she tried to do to me. A loud gunshot rang out, and a line of red mist hung in the air right by Todoroki's head. The other team didn't move as Izuku slowly lowered the sniper rifle in his right hand. One of his hammers still clutched in his left. That was a warning shot. Insult Momo one more time. Make a single move to harm anyone else, and you've officially surrendered any chance of ending this peacefully. Todoroki scoffed. Warning shots usually imply that the sender is a threat to the receiver. Besides, why would I ever want to return to a system that has every intention of weakening me? Always wasting time with strategy this and collateral damage that. Ridiculous. All that matters is that I destroy my opponent. Everything else is trivial. Izuku sighed and dropped the machina, picking up his other hammer as the rifle disintegrated. I tried diplomacy, but if you're going to be a stubborn bastard, then force will have to do. Todoroki huffed as frost spread across his right side, forming a patch of ice on the ground beside him. Go ahead, defy me. You're nothing but a pebble in the way on my road to vengeance. Izuku's eyes blazed coldly. You picked the wrong thing to say. I've been called a pebble way too fucking many times before. The thing about pebbles, though, is that they're more than capable of causing damage when given enough velocity. And this pebble's about to launch itself at your face at Mach 5. Ice burst forward, trapping Izuku within a glacier. Through his prison, he could hear Todoroki scoff. Please, all obstacles in my path will suffer the same fate, frozen and tossed aside as I continue forward. Izuku's eyes narrowed, and his hammers shifted. The ground rumbled, and fire burst to life, incinerating a vertical hole in the glacier before spreading outwards, sending shards of ice flying in every direction. Todoroki hastily threw up a wall of ice to protect himself, only to grunt with surprise when Izuku smashed through in an instant. Wanna bet? His left hammer swung forward, ramming into Todoroki's face. Izuku roared, and Todoroki was sent flying off the edge of the cliff, backflipping uncontrollably through the air as he sailed over the tops of the trees. Not wasting a second, Izuku summoned his extreme gear under his feet and took off, chasing after his former classmate. I'm gonna show you just how much of a pebble I really am. Chapter 32. Shoyuta sighed as he stepped out of the lodge, leaning against the double doors and staring up at the night sky. I should get Vlad a gift basket for having to deal with Monoma this past semester. Now he knows what it's like to have a problem child. His attention snapped to the treeline at the sound of rapid footsteps, and the Izumi kid burst into the clearing. Big trouble. Villain. At my secret base. The green kid is fighting him. Shuta's eyes narrowed. What does the villain look like? Ratty costume. Split hair. Burned eye. Shoyuta swore under his breath. Fuck. He raised his voice to address the other students standing by for their turn on the trail. Everyone, get inside. Todoroki is currently up on the mountainside. Midoriya is currently holding him off, but Nezu knows how long that'll last. Immediately, the kids started moving towards the lodge in a hurried yet orderly fashion. Shoyuta nodded in approval, and his gaze went back to the kids standing in front of him. You get inside too. Unlike the other brats, you aren't trained. If the villain gets into the lodge, stay behind my students. They aren't letting anyone touch you without going through them first. The kid ran inside, just as Bakugu burst from the treeline. Bad news. We've got villains in the area. Shuta's blood ran cold. More than one. Bakugu nodded. Izuku and I ran into one while we were on the trail, and he basically told us that there were more of him. Half and half is here too, but he's working alone. The one we ran into said that he wanted Todoroki's destructiveness out of play, so he could have a better stage or some shit. But once Icy Hot is down, they're coming after Izuku. Shoyuta hummed. Alright, get inside. I'm going to go support Midoriya as best as I can. There was a grunt from around the corner, and Shoyuta dropped into a defensive stance as Dabi rounded the corner. I personally wouldn't recommend it. You're currently Shudo's primary target, so showing up would only make him angrier. Let the bean handle him. Also, just a heads up, we've got a couple nutcases in the squad. I personally don't like M, but Shigi's boss wanted them. Muscular and Moonfish, to be precise. Bakugu's eyes narrowed. And why the hell should we believe you? Shoyuta held a hand out to the side. Bakugu, get inside. Now. The blonde huffed, but did as he was told. Once the doors closed, Shoyuta straightened and walked up to the burned man. You claim to be defecting, yet you're here leading an attack on the students. You're sending a lot of mixed signals. Dabi shrugged and stuck his hands in the pockets of his coat. Didn't want to make Sensei suspicious. We're going along with his plans for now. But when the opportunity presents itself, we're gonna make our big turn. Shoyuta grunted. Alright, aside from Todoroki, Muscular, and Moonfish, what else do we need to be aware of? Dabi huffed. The blonde kid was right. Once Shudo's down, we move in to complete our objective. Shigi was the one who ordered that Midoriya be left alive, but I'm not sure I like the idea of the kid being anywhere near Sensei. In any case, once the hindrance is out of the picture, we're gonna have to go in ourselves to keep up appearances. Don't hold it against me if I end up injuring any of your kids. I won't be aiming for kill shots, but I gotta make my allegiance look believable. The others would be more than happy to go all out, but most of them are Stain fans, so we got him to convince them not to go too hard. We'll hold off on charging in until Shudo isn't in the picture. So I recommend gathering your brats while you've still got a chance. Shoyuta nodded. Understood. Thanks for the warning. Dabi grinned. Thank me by finding a way to take out Sensei. I don't like the idea of him sticking around in the shadows plotting who knows what. Not to mention, he basically bred Shigi for his own purposes. That never sits well with me. Before Shoyuta could ask what the hell that meant, Dabi faded into the shadows of the trees, just as Pixie Bob burst out of the ground. Eraserhead, what's going on? Two of your kitties dropped the game and split up. She paused and glanced around the clearing. And where are the other kitties? Shoyuta grunted. Todoroki is here along with several other villains. Midoriya is holding him off and I want to go help support, but I'm currently Todoroki's main target. Our priority is getting the remaining students inside the lodge. Where's Ragdoll? Tiger climbed out of the tunnel that Pixie Bob had left behind. She's posted in a clearing halfway along the trail, at a table with the tags for the students. Last I checked, Mandalay was heading out towards her. But we haven't heard anything back from either of them yet. Shoyuta nodded. Understood. Fan out. 15-degree difference between the three of us. Pixie Bob in the center, Tiger on the right, me on the left. We need to be far enough apart to cover as much ground as possible, but close enough that we can support each other if necessary. The two heroes nodded their understanding, and the three of them sprinted into the trees, spreading out and glancing around frantically. You'd better be safe out there, Hellspawn. Izuku's world was nothing but flashes of white-blue ice and red-orange fire. Every one of Todoroki's ice spikes was met and evaporated by a swing from his masked hammer. The surrounding trees had all been destroyed by this point. You know, for being the burning death of all heroes. I'm not seeing a lot of burning on your end. Todoroki scoffed. The bastard wants me to be the #1 hero using his fire. So I'll throw it back in his face by becoming the #1 villain with only my mother's ice. His pitiful power will be relegated to counteracting frostbite, and nothing else. I'll prove that I don't need him. Izuku sighed, before sidestepping an ice spike and lunging forward. Todoroki's eyes widened as Izuku closed the distance in seconds. One of his hammers swung forward, slamming right into Todoroki's stomach. Fire burst to life, and the other teen was sent flying into the side of the cliff, leaving an impact crater about twice his height in the mountainside. Izuku spun one hammer in his grip. You know, that's a really stupid way of thinking about your quirk. Todoroki scowled. You dare insult me? Izuku huffed. Think about it, Todoroki. You're deliberately discarding half of the power available to you. Do you really think you'll be able to accomplish anything if you only use half of your full strength? Heroes and villains can't half-ass anything if they expect to keep going. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. You know nothing of strength. You are nothing. Nobody. You have no background, no history, no power. Izuku gripped his hammers tighter. Background isn't everything. All Might came from nowhere, and yet he rose up to become the greatest hero of his generation. Todoroki grunted. A single outlier does not change the facts. Only those born with power are worth anything. Everyone else is their pawns to do with as they please. I was born with all of the power in the world. You, meanwhile, were born with nothing, so you are nothing. Simple as that. Izuku sighed and shook his head. You sweet summer child. Nothing is ever as simple as that. Todoroki peeled himself off the cliffside, frost forming on his right side. Enough talk. You will be the first to die. But don't worry. I'll send the rest of those failures to join you shortly. Starting with that horrible excuse for a teacher. Ice burst from his right foot, surging across the ground. Izuku brought one arm back while holding the other across his chest. The hammers caught fire, and Izuku spun on his heel, a tornado of flame roaring to life around him. Fire met ice and the air exploded. Izuku dug his feet into the ground and just barely kept himself from being flung into a miraculously surviving tree. Todoroki was sent flying back into the mountainside, deepening the impact crater from before. The area stood still for a few seconds, before Todoroki crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Izuku heaved a sigh of relief and let his hammers drop to the ground, walking up to the other teen's prone form. He reached out a hand to grab Todoroki's wrist, only for the ground to rumble. Ha! His instincts flared, and he jumped back as a gray blur smashed into the cliff face, showering him with a spray of rubble. As the cloud of dust began to settle, a large figure in a gray cloak stepped forward. Dabi said we could move in once the dumbass was down. Well, he's down. Time for some old-fashioned carnage. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Muscular, S-ranked villain and known serial killer. Your convoy to Tartarus a week ago was intercepted and destroyed, and you escaped in the aftermath. I'm guessing you ended up with the League of Villains. The man laughed, tossing aside the cloak. Man, Shiggy was right about you. You're pretty damn smart for a brat. Let's see if you can put your money where your mouth is. Izuku sighed, and green balls of light coalesced into his right hand, forming into a black baseball bat with red grip tape and yellow circles close to the end. He quickly glanced around, before his eyes zeroed in on the horizon. Tartarus should be in that direction. Muscular paused. Ha! In the blink of an eye, Izuku was standing right in front of the villain, already leaning back in a perfect batter stance. Give the Hecatonkires my regards. The bat swung forward, and a loud smash rang throughout the area. Muscular was sent flying, streaking through the night sky at near-sonic speeds. Izuku let the bat fall onto his left shoulder in the follow-through, raising a hand to his forehead and peering at the rapidly retreating form of the villain. Yeah, that'll do. Suddenly, his world turned bright blue. Atsuhiro chuckled to himself as he picked up the marble containing the Midoriya boy, stowing it in an inside pocket of his coat, before turning to the prone form of the Todoroki boy. My, you're a troublesome one. What to do, what to do? Black mist swirled into existence next to him, and Atsuhiro turned to see Kurojairi standing there with an unreadable expression. Sensei has ordered that the Todoroki boy be brought to him. I suggest that you compress him for now, so that it will be easier to transport him to the bar. Atsuhiro sighed, before stepping forward and tapping the boy's arm. The body vanished, and in its place sat a light blue marble. Atsuhiro plucked it from the ground, turning it in his fingers. Such a shame, isn't it? So much talent. And yet he insists on wanton death and destruction. Kurogiri huffed. We should hurry. Sensei is not feeling very patient right now, and I'm certain he will be upset when we return without Ragdoll. Yasuhiro hummed. Is that so? Well, I certainly have no intention of upsetting him any further than that. Dabi grunted as Kurogiri appeared in the clearing behind him. I take it we're done here? The misty villain nodded, opening a warp gate. Indeed, it is time for us to take our leave. Dabi grinned, only to turn at the sound of footsteps. Eraserhead burst into the clearing, eyes locked on the two of them. Dabi raised a two-fingered salute to his forehead. Sorry, Eraser. I'd love to stick around, but Shiggy's got us on a tight schedule. See ya. He stepped backwards through the warp gate, his breath hitching as the hero dove forward, capture scarf twisting through the air towards Dabi's face. Thankfully, the warp gate closed as he stumbled into a barstool, drawing a couple of stares from the others as he caught his breath. Compress pulled his mask off, sporting a concerned expression. Are you all right, Dabi? Dabi nodded, collecting himself and sitting firmly on the stool. I'm fine. Just had a close encounter with Eraserhead on the way out. One of their younger recruits called Mustard scoffed. Can't have given you too much trouble. If he was anyone dangerous, I'd have heard of him already. Dabi glared at the kid and opened his mouth to retort, but the crackling sound of static from the TV in the corner drew everyone's attention. Enough. Did you manage to claim your prize? Compress nodded, pulling a marble out of his coat. We managed to capture a student, but unfortunately, Ragdoll escaped our grasp, and we lost Muscular and Moonfish. Kurogiri has also informed me that you wish to meet with our acquaintance. With a flourish, he pulled another marble out of a different pocket, tossing it on the floor and snapping his fingers. The marble burst in a shower of blue sparkles, and Shudo lay there on the floor of the bar, unconscious. All for one hummed in disappointment. A shame. It appears he was bested by one of the students. No matter. Kurogiri, bring the boy to me. Tamura, you may do as you wish with your target. The TV shut off, and Shudo's body fell into a warp gate on the floor. Dabi felt something in his chest pinch. Don't die on me, kid. I'll be damned if my baby brother gets killed on my watch. Shudo bolted upright, immediately taking a defensive stance when he didn't recognize his surroundings. What is this? Where am I? A low cough drew his attention to the other occupant of the room, a man missing the entire upper half of his face, sitting in a wheelchair and strapped to a life support system. Greetings, young Todoroki. You've caused quite a splash in the underworld. I simply had to meet you myself. Shudo's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The man smiled. You may call me All for One. Shudo huffed. Impossible. All for One is a myth. If there was truly a man with the power to take quirks, he would already be living like a king. The man chuckled. I did once, but then that infernal All Might appeared and reduced me to what you see now. I have chosen to rule from the shadows, building up my resources until the time was ripe to strike back against that blonde buffoon. Shudo scoffed. Foolish. It is the right of those with power to conquer those without. And a man with multiple quirks is the most powerful of all. To sit back and let others claim your deserved position is cowardly. The man frowned, and the air grew cold. I suggest you watch your tone, boy. Shudo crossed his arms. Prove it. Remove my father's fire. It is a curse upon me. It holds me back, even if I do not use it. If you are truly the villain of legend, then surely such a task would be child's play. The man raised his arm, and Shudo's face was pulled into the man's grasp. Red light filled his vision for a few seconds. When it faded, he slumped to the ground, still conscious, but without the strength to stand. The man before him flexed his hands, and fire sparked in his left palm. Shudo smirked, only to pale when ice formed on the man's right arm. Goodness, what a marvelous quirk. I must thank Endeavor for delivering this power to me. Shudo pulled himself up, leaning against the nearest wall for support. What is the meaning of this? I instructed you to remove his fire, not her ice. The man tooted. You naive fool. The fire and the ice are two parts of a magnificent whole. You only ever had a singular quirk, and yet you squandered its potential over a simple resemblance to Hellflame. Shudo scowled. I demand that you return my mother's ice to me. All for one side, standing up from his wheelchair. His fingers turned black with red lines running along them, before they elongated into thin rivets and stabbed Shudo through the shoulders, pinning him to the wall. He cried out in pain, and All for One walked forward, emanating an air of danger. You demand nothing, child. You hold no power over me. Even if you still had your quirk, you still would not have had the strength to make demands of me. My quirk cannot be beaten. Is perfect. All for One scoffed. Foolish child. No quirk is ever truly perfect on its own. But that is the beauty of my own power. Rest assured, your quirk will be put to good use. Unfortunately, I cannot trust you to be able to use it properly, and so it will remain with me. Through the pain, Shudo managed to glare at the villain. Then kill me. Without my quirk, there is no reason for me to continue living. Without power, I am worthless. All for One tooted. Normally I would with nary a thought, but after such blatant disrespect, killing you would be a mercy. I heard that a peer of yours was berated and abused every day of his life because he was believed to be quirkless. Why don't you see what that's like for yourself? The pain flared, and Shudo's eyes rolled back in his head as he fell unconscious. Again. The last thing he heard was the soft laughter of the monster who took everything from him. The moment Izuku was released from his prison, he came out swinging with the home run bat still in hand. However, it was immediately caught and disintegrated. Geez, chill. Nobody's hurting you while I'm in charge, player 2. As Izuku's other senses caught up to his instincts, he registered that he was standing in the middle of a bar, with Shigaraki sitting on a bar stool in front of him. Kurogiri was behind the bar, scrubbing at a glass with a clean rag. Dabi was sitting a couple stools down from Shigaraki, and other villains were sitting in the various booths. After taking in as much information as he could, Izuku backed up a couple paces and took a deep breath, before plopping himself in the closest empty booth. What do you want, Shiggy? The villain sighed, glancing over at the TV in the corner. Sensei told me to grab someone from your class. He never specified, so I figured I'd go for someone I could actually fucking tolerate. Izuku grunted, taking in the identities of the others in the bar. There was a kid wearing a junior high Gakurin and a gas mask, polishing an old-fashioned revolver in a nearby booth. In the corner was a lizard man running a cloth over a giant blade made of smaller blades secured together by belts. At the bar sat a man wearing a black jumpsuit, red bracers, and a gray mask with white eyes. Hanging from the chandelier by her legs was a blonde girl around Izuku's age, wearing a strange apparatus around her neck with a wide, fanged grin on her face. In another booth, there was a muscular person holding a large object wrapped in cloth. Finally, leaning against the door to the upstairs was Mr. Compress, watching Izuku with interest. Somebody's beefed up their selection process for new units. Finally going for quality over quantity, I see. Shigaraki shrugged. After the utter failure at the USJ, I figured a few S-rank units would have better DPS than dozens of D-rank units. Izuku leaned back in the booth, lacing his fingers together. So, did your sensei tell you what to do if you succeeded, or? Shigaraki opened his mouth to respond, only for a cloud of black sludge to form in the air in the middle of the bar. A couple seconds later, the unmistakable form of Todoroki fell out, slamming face first into the floorboards. Kurogiri sighed as the sludge disappeared. It seems Sensei has finished his business with him. I'm surprised he's still alive. Todoroki bolted upright, kneeling on the floor and gasping as he clutched at his forearms. My quirk. That bastard took my quirk. Dabi choked on his own spit as the rest of the bar glanced around at each other. Before anyone could say anything, the TV in the corner flickered on to reveal an audio-only screen. A distorted voice rang out. Ah, you must be Tamura's coveted player 2. I'm afraid I don't have the pleasure of knowing your name, young man. Izuku huffed. I'm not dumb enough to give out personal information like that. Call me Save Point. Clapping could be heard from the other end. Goodness, UA truly does know how to weed out the brightest from the pack. Izuku grunted. In any case, you wanted someone from my class. Why? Sensei huffed. So impatient. Can't an old man build up to a dramatic reveal anymore? Still, I suppose I'll allow it. You see, I've heard of many rumors surrounding a certain UA student, and I wish to learn the truth for myself. What better way than to hear from someone who knows them? Izuku raised an eyebrow. Well, how much I'll tell depends on the student in question. Sensei chuckled. How cute. You actually think you have a choice in the matter. Kurogiri, send the boy to me. The misty bartender jolted. Of course, sir. A warp gate formed underneath Izuku, and he nimbly dropped through, landing on his feet in an enclosed room. There wasn't a single entrance, not even a window, and the only source of light was a single bulb in the center of the ceiling. Izuku's attention was drawn by the man sitting in a wheelchair before him, strapped to a life support machine and missing the upper half of his face. Yeesh, where'd your face go? Sensei huffed. You have all might to thank for my current state. Our battle 6 years ago reduced me to what you see now. But enough about me. One hand reached out, and an invisible force pulled Izuku's face into Sensei's grip. You will surrender to me all you know about this Kriati. There was an immense pressure on all sides of his head, and Izuku lost consciousness. Shoyuta slammed a fist against the door frame of Yairozu's room. Damn it! That's 3 students gone within the span of a couple weeks. Chio appeared out of nowhere and smacked his knee with her cane. She hissed, Quiet! Do you want to disturb her? He glared down at the elderly heroine. You've said yourself that her current state isn't liable to change anytime soon. I doubt a little banging is going to do anything. He bowed his head, and his fist tightened. I can't deal with the fact that I've lost 3 kids, especially from this class. They've had the most potential of any year I've taught, and yet they've had some of the biggest losses. At the start of the year, I thought they'd stick together like glue. But, Chio sighed, you've grown attached to them. Losing any of them feels like a chunk taken out of your heart, doesn't it? Shoyuta nodded wordlessly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his signature yellow goggles, staring down at them morosely. When I accepted the teaching position, I swore that I wouldn't lose anyone else important, that I'd keep the kids safe, and then I managed to screw that up too. The sound of approaching footsteps caught his attention, and he raised his head as Hizashi walked up to him. Hey, Press conference is in an hour. Nedzu wants you ready as soon as possible. Shoyuta sighed, pocketing the goggles and standing upright. I still don't know why the fuck we're doing this. Hizashi hummed sympathetically. I don't know either, but I make it a habit not to question the rat god. Come on, let's get moving. Yairozu's not gonna die just because you're not in the room with her. Reluctantly, Shoyuta allowed himself to be dragged down the hall, tossing one last glance at his class vice rep laying there. We'll find a way. Promise. We're not gonna let such a promising future be cut short. As the pressure on his head subsided, Izuku regained his senses as he fell to his knees on the floor, coughing as he tried to find his bearings. Above him, he could hear Sensei chuckling. So young Yairozu is in a coma as a result of Endeavor abusing his youngest, is she? What a shame. A quirk as magnificent as hers deserves to be free. Perhaps I should pay her a visit at some point, Izuku snarled. You keep your filthy hands off my vice rep, or I swear on everything holy and demonic. Sensei hummed in amusement. Holy and demonic? That's a new one. Most heroes I've fought only ever swear on all that is holy. Izuku glared up at the villain. Sometimes, there's an evil so terrible that it needs God and Satan to take care of it. Sensei chuckled. You're quite the bold one, save point. Not nearly as haughty as your former classmate, but at least you know where to toe the line. Young Terminus believed he could make demands of me, and well, I simply couldn't let that stand. Izuku slowly pulled himself to his feet, leaning against the wall away from the villain. So what now? Sensei hummed. Not much, I suppose. Your quirk is an interesting one, but I've never enjoyed taking stockpiling quirks. It's just so annoying to have to collect a specific resource just to use a given power. And it's not viable for a Nomu, since it requires some level of cognition. I suppose I'll just let Tamura have his way with you. He snapped his fingers, and Izuku coughed as black sludge poured from his mouth, covering him. Something shifted, and he fell onto the floorboards of the bar. As his vision cleared, he could see Dabi and Shigaraki standing nearby, ready to step in if necessary. Well, that was unpleasant. Todoroki stared at him. You don't seem very shocked. Did he not take your quirk like he did mine? Izuku pounded his chest with his fist, coughing a few times to clear the rest of the sludge out of his system. Nah, he hates stockpiling quirks, and mine's probably more annoying than others, considering it requires 2 resources to work, while other stockpiles usually only need 1. The kid with the gas mask huffed. As riveting as this is, Yue's holding a press conference. Again. Wanna put it on the big screen, handsy? Shigaraki grabbed a remote from the bar with 4 fingers, pressing the power button. The flat-screen TV above the bar flickered on, showing a live feed from Yue's conference room. Izuku could see Nedzu sitting in center frame, with Aizawa-sensei on the mammal's right and Vlad King on his left. A reporter was speaking, but Izuku could only focus on how haggard his teacher looked. The bags under his eyes were worse than normal, and his eyes were red and puffy. The man obviously hadn't taken Izuku's capture well, but he was somehow managing to hold it together for the conference. Suddenly, Izuku's senses tingled, and he tore his gaze away from the TV, scanning the room for whatever was making him uneasy. Glancing over the bar, he could see a smaller screen by the wine rack that was displaying security footage from the entrance. Izuku went pale as he recognized the signature flaming costume of Endeavor. Shit. He hurled himself away from the outside wall, just as a tremendous force tore a hole through the brick and sent a huge gust blowing through the bar. Maruko stepped in through the breach, grinning widely. Knock knock, motherfuckers. Kamui Woods swung in and released his lacquered chain prison, binding everyone else in an instant. Before anyone could react, a thin red line stabbed through Kurogiri's head, and the bartender slumped over, unconscious. The red line emerged and unfolded to reveal the form of the number for hero, Edgeshot. Nowhere to run, League of Villains. Shigaraki grunted. Guess it was inevitable, given how much we've pestered Yue already. A low voice rumbled. Hold it. Izuku's eyes narrowed as Endeavor stepped in through the hole in the wall. I heard that my errant son is among you. I will be taking him back now. Todoroki scoffed from where he was still sitting nonchalantly in one of the booths. I doubt you'd be interested in another null. Endeavor huffed. You stoop so low as to lie that you do not have the power I gifted you? Your attempts at humor are pitiful, Shudo. Todoroki snarled. I have never made jokes, and I have no intention to make jokes in the future, if I even have one. My quirk was stolen. My revenge foiled before I even had a shot at your sorry hide. Endeavor took a few steps back, his eyes widening. Then he growled. Fine. Rot with the rest of these scum. I have no use for quirkless filth. Todoroki raised an eyebrow. So, are you finally going to pull Mother out of that mental hospital to try and make another masterpiece? Endeavor huffed. I have no reason to explain anything to worthless scum like you. Izuku held his hands up. Gentlemen, now's not the time to air your family's dirty laundry. Endeavor glared at him. Stay out of this, boy. This is not your business. Izuku snarled. When your abuse makes your kid put my vice rep in a coma, you bet your fiery ass it's my business. Endeavor scoffed. Children should keep their noses out of where they don't belong. Suddenly, pressure surged in Izuku's throat, and black sludge erupted from his mouth, alongside every one of the villains. Before the sludge swallowed him completely, Izuku could see Maruko lunging towards him. Gravity took hold, and Izuku fell out of the sludge into what looked like the destroyed ruins of a warehouse. Sensei's voice rang out. "My, that was a close call. Do not worry, Tamura. I will always be here for you." As Izuku took in his surroundings, he recognized the tall buildings of Kamino Ward lining the area. The warehouse had been mostly destroyed, save for a single wall. But his attention was focused on the bodies of heroes strewn about the area. Best Jeanist, Tiger, Gang Orca, and especially the massive form of Mount Lady lying against a ruined skyscraper. Best Jeanist looked the most injured of the four, with a massive hole in his stomach and his breathing labored. Shigaraki slowly climbed to his feet. "How come you didn't warp the hero killer with us, Sensei? I thought you told me that he was an important member of the League." The villain smacked a hand against his skull-themed helmet. "Oh, dearie me, I seem to have forgotten. Not to worry, just a simple flick of the wrist." And another cloud of black sludge formed in midair, and Stain dropped out of it, clad in full costume, looking just like how Izuku remembered from the broadcast during internships. "Took you long enough. I was expecting to be gone before I heard the cries of the heroes in the bar. Though, I'm surprised they didn't think to check upstairs for any stragglers." Sensei tutade. "Such is the way of heroes in this generation, isn't it? So blind to anything not thrust in their face." Izuku nearly froze as Stain's gaze passed over him. "That's the save point boy, isn't it? Shigaraki's supposed player too." Sensei nodded. "Indeed, Tamura seemed so fond of him. I believed it prudent to bring him with the rest of the League." Stain huffed, walking over and crouching in front of him. As he leaned closer, he whispered, "All for One has exposed himself. Now seems like a good time to break code." Izuku's eyes widened in understanding. Before he could do anything, there was a rush of wind, and All for One, as he was apparently called, pivoted in midair to catch Maruko's signature Luna Fall. "You're going down, potato face." All for One chuckled. "Really? The number 6 hero? I would have expected All Might to show up at the very least." Maruko huffed. "Apparently the big lug's too injured for hero work. Something about the Todoroki brat." All for One let out a small noise of surprise. "Is that so? Perhaps I judged the boy too harshly, if he managed to cripple All Might himself." Suddenly, a bang resonated throughout the area, and Maruko jumped back just as a concentrated blast slammed into All for One's upper chest, incinerating the lower part of his mask and sending him flying back several meters into a wall, causing a pile of rubble to fall on top of him. A familiar voice roared, "Fuck off, eh." Another wall crumbled, and Izuku's heart soared as he saw the hero hopefuls of One standing there in full hero costume. Kyuka's gaze locked onto him, and he swore he saw her shoulders sag a good few inches. Clambering to his feet, Izuku turned on his heel and tossed up a two-fingered salute towards the League. "Well, it's been fun, but Babe's calling, and I'd be damned if I didn't accept." He fell backwards, manifesting his extreme gear in midair behind him. As expected, the force from the board pushing off the ground set him flying through the air, backflipping until he landed safely in Kyuka's arms. Without missing a beat, she grunted, "I'm getting Gremlin to install a tracking chip in your hero costume." Izuku chuckled. "That's fair." Suddenly, the ground rumbled, and All for One rose from the rubble. His attention locked on the 8 of them. "My UA deems it necessary to send children into battle? What has the world come to?" Izuku slid out of Kyuka's arms and nimbly landed on his feet, striding forward to stand next to Katsuki. "Children, sure, but pretty damn powerful children. And your world's about to come to a screeching halt of the Tartarus variety." All for One chuckled. "How cute. You children actually think you stand a chance against one who possesses hundreds, even thousands of quirks? Truly laughable." Katsuki grinned. "Who said we had to deal with your quirks?" Suddenly, All for One dropped to the ground, looking at his hand in confusion. Strips of gray cloth wrapped around him and pulled him back into the air, just as a dark figure dropped from the sky and slammed him back into the ground. As the dust faded, Izuku's grin widened as he saw Eraserhead standing on top of All for One, glaring down at the villain with his quirk activated. "You're fucking insane if you think you're laying a filthy hand on any of my students." Unfortunately, the mood shattered when All for One's body started glowing. Eraserhead paused, only to jump back as the villain started expanding, his suit ripping and his shoes flying off of his feet. The helmet started creaking, then burst as All for One's head started inflating at a rapid pace. Different colored beams of light started flashing from various points on his body, and an ominous hissing noise began to fill the area. Izuku went pale as he realized what was going on. Eraserhead cut off his primary quirk, which means there's nothing protecting his body from the strain of the thousands of quirks he has stored up. He's literally going to burst from the power. Katsuki swore under his breath. "The blast radius isn't going to be small, I'll tell you that much. How do we get his ass out of here?" Izuku grinned. "Simple. We recreate the quirk apprehension test, but on a larger scale." "Huh." Izuku spun on his heel. "Uravity. Send his ass into the stratosphere." The brunette nodded, immediately tapping her chest and shooting forward, bounding across the open landscape. "On it." Izuku turned to the others. Everyone else, get the injured clear. We want as few people sticking around when this nuke goes off. With any luck, we'll detonate it high enough that it won't cause any damage, but it pays to be prepared. The group nodded and immediately split up. Izuku grabbed Katsuki's arm before the blonde could head towards the wounded heroes. What? You need to pop a cap in his bitch ass. The guy's gonna do as much as he can to keep himself from detonating, and Eraserhead can only have his quirk active for so long. If Erasure shuts off before the villain goes kaboom, then he's gonna get his quirks back under control, and we can't let that happen. This guy needs to go down here and now. Katsuki shook his head. I don't have that kind of precision. My AP shot still needs more work before it can travel the distance that we need. You're the only one who can do it from far enough away. You've got a sniper rifle in your inventory, right? Izuku quickly checked his supplies, and the classic appeared in his right hand. If we need to make him explode, then this one's my best bet. Go help the others. As Katsuki ran off, Izuku turned and took a deep breath. Just gotta make one shot to save all of Japan. No pressure, right? His instincts flared, and he snapped off a shot that knocked away the revolver of the kid in the gas mask. Oi, I'm trying to save the country here. The kid scoffed, purple mist flowing from his arms. Why should I give a crap about the country? You're one of the idiots who lives in it. The kid raised a hand to retort, paused, then sighed. Fair. Izuku nodded and turned his attention back to where Ochako was standing ready. He raised his left hand, suddenly holding his Meta Knight sword, and sent a crescent shot flying straight upwards. On cue, Ochako lunged forward and slammed her hands into All for One's body, activating her quirk and sending the ball of flesh rocketing upward. Izuku pulled back on the trigger of the classic, feeling the mechanisms of the rifle whir. As the villain's form soared higher and higher, Eraserhead kept his gaze locked on it. As the rifle clicked to signal a fully charged shot, Izuku brought the scope up to his face and tracked the villain's path as he shot skyward. Running through several mental calculations in his head, Izuku shifted his aim to where he knew that the villain would be on the edge of Eraser's range. The second that the barely distinguishable head was within his crosshair, Izuku let go of the trigger, the bullet streaking upwards and leaving a distortion in the air behind it. The explosion was almost a replacement for the sun itself. The surrounding sky was filled with rings of varying colors, a spectrum of destruction radiating from the blinding white core. Izuku pulled out his Hylian shield and ducked behind it, mere moments before a blast of hot wind scorched the area. For a brief moment, Izuku was scared that the others wouldn't make it, but out of nowhere, several walls of deep blue ice shot up from the ground. The heat managed to melt the first few centimeters, but more ice walls sprung up to support the first ones. After a few seconds, the blinding white ball in the sky began to fade, and the intense heat started to let up. The sky began to return to the black of night, and Izuku finally felt brave enough to emerge from underneath the shield. What he saw was enough to take his breath away. Kamino Ward resembled a photo of pre-Quirk Hiroshima after the detonation of the atomic bomb. Save for the areas behind the ice walls, everything was blackened and burned. The closest skyscrapers were charred to a crisp, and the ones behind those weren't much better. Thankfully, there didn't appear to be any casualties, since the area had evidently been cleared out beforehand. As the rest of the raid team started emerging from behind shelter, Izuku raised an eyebrow at the white-haired woman standing nearby. He walked over and placed a hand on his hip. And who might you be? The woman grinned. Todoroki Fuyumi. I'm here for my dumbass younger brother. Though, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure my dumbass older brother is here, too. Shudo pulled himself out from behind the wall of ice protecting the league, and his eyes widened. Fuyumi? How? Father never trained you. Fuyumi huffed. He also never bothered to keep anyone from visiting Mom, aside from you and Tuya. Mom is Dad's opposite, remember? Powerful ice quirk that matches Hellflame in raw output. Dabi pulled himself up and over the ice wall and chuckled. Can't believe you forgot that Yumi is my opposite as much as Mom is Dad's. Bet she considered that heat a light breeze. Fuyumi scoffed. It was very warm, I'll have you know. Oh, and that reminds me. She immediately shot forward and slammed a beautiful right hook into Dabi's jaw. As the villain went reeling, she shouted. That's for leaving me to take care of Natsuo and Shudo by myself for 10 years, you asshole. Shudo's eyes shot open. Since when do you swear? She rounded on him. Oh. Don't even get me started. Mr. Broadcast my location to every person in Japan. Izuku chuckled as the woman berated her two brothers, before glancing over at the rest of the league emerging from behind their cover. He walked over, glancing over at Shigaraki. So, are we gonna do this the easy way, or the hard way? Shigaraki snorted. You already know I'm going the easy way, brat. A chorus of protests rose up, only to fall silent when the man snapped his fingers. Oi, listen up. I was never the true leader of the league, and I was already planning to defect before you guys even attacked the camp. Hell, the only reason the heroes knew to attack both locations was because of the info Kurogiri and I gave them. You can make your own decisions, but I'm done being a pawn. Stain grunted. I will be going off on my own, since I was never an official league member in the first place. He glanced over at Izuku. I will not target heroes, unless they prove that they cannot be trusted to change their ways for the better. I will, however, look for ways to atone for my more unsavory actions. Tonight has proven that there are those who carry out their evils under the cover of anonymity. Perhaps Stendhal will rise again. The man stepped backwards into the shadows, vanishing in an instant. Izuku turned his attention to the rest of the league, raising one eyebrow in a question. So, what will the rest of you do? The kid took a step forward, purple mist flowing from his hand. A simple glance from Eraserhead cut off the mist, and Izuku stepped forward, laying a short right hook into the kid's mask, knocking him flat on his back. Anyone else? One by one, the rest of the league raised their hands in surrender. Mom was beside herself with tears once Izuku got back to the apartment. He was immediately wrapped in a blanket and deposited on the couch, Kyuka and Katsuki positioned on either side of him. As he leaned into their warmth, Aizawa-sensei took Mom into the kitchen and explained what had happened. Izuku knew for a fact that Mom had her hand over her mouth the entire time Aizawa-sensei was describing the events in the ruins of the warehouse. Aizawa-sensei finished. Afterwards, everyone present was checked over at Kamino General Hospital. Thankfully, none of the students were injured during the events of the raid, and civilian casualties were minimal. Mom breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you. However, this isn't the first time UA's been attacked this year. What guarantee can you give that the students won't be put in danger again so soon? Izuku twisted in his seat to stare over the back of the couch. Mom, you can't seriously be considering pulling me from UA? Can you? Mom smiled. I couldn't do that, sweetie. You've been so happy. I couldn't take that from you. But I'm sure it's a concern that other parents might have. Aizawa-sensei nodded. Fair point. We have implemented extra security measures, but after one of our students was kidnapped away from school grounds, we're making a few changes in order to ensure that said security measures are in use as often as possible. Namely, the introduction of on-campus dorms. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Dorms? We've constructed several dorm halls on campus, all secured by various protections that I legally cannot discuss, but rest assured that nothing gets in or out without our permission. Every class has its own dorm hall, and while using them isn't mandatory, it's highly recommended by the staff so that we can ensure our students' safety. Mom hummed. Interesting. What sort of amenities will there be? Every hall has its own kitchen, dining room, common room, and courtyard. Each room will have its own bathroom, air conditioning, and balcony. Students will be allowed to decorate or remodel their rooms as they please. Also, students living on campus will be provided with access to any of the gyms, so that they can keep up their training regimens on their own time. We're still working out the details of scheduling, but after the Todoroki snafu, we will allow for regular breaks. Mom nodded. Good to hear. Is there some sort of extra fee for moving into the dorms? I'm aware that some of UA's students may be experiencing financial difficulties. Aizawa-sensei shook his head. Using the dorms doesn't change the cost of tuition by even a single yen. If anything, it makes it cheaper to attend, since students won't have to pay for transport. There will be a basic supply of ingredients paid for by the school, but specific materials need to be purchased by the students on organized shopping trips. And before you ask, there will be at least one teacher assigned to each dorm hall, and we've all been given a crash course in cooking by lunch rush. Recovery Girl is on standby in the event of medical emergencies, and dietary changes or restrictions go through her. We want to make sure our students are getting enough to eat, and that they aren't eating something they shouldn't. Mom smiled softly. Good. I'm glad to hear that UA isn't skimping on the quality of their care. Izuku snorted. Plus Ultra is kinda their thing. Aizawa-sensei nodded. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the dorms aren't mandatory, but the teachers will be going around to their students' families and discussing the possibility. Since I already had to bring Midoriya here, I figured I'd knock out two birds with one stone. Mom chuckled. Of course, so long as they're allowed to visit their families every so often, I don't see a reason to keep Izuku from going. Toshinori stuck his head through the doorway, taking in the prone form of young Yaoyorozu. Still no change, I take it? Shizenji-san nodded, a clipboard in her hand. Her vitals are as steady and low as they were the day of the final exams. I've been calling in as many favors as I can to find someone who can help her, but they've all been a wash so far. Toshinori sighed. I suppose I should resume my search for a successor. Shizenji-san gave him an odd look. And why do you think you need one? He opened his mouth to respond, but paused. She continued, think about it. All for One is dead and gone, and the League all got arrested, save for Stain, who we already know won't be much of a problem for us. You've said that One for All was meant to fight All for One, so isn't its purpose fulfilled? There's no reason to burden anyone else with it, as far as I can tell. Toshinori nodded slowly. I suppose you are correct that One for All no longer needs to be passed on. But doesn't the country still need a symbol of peace? Shizenji-san sighed. Not anymore, it doesn't. We only needed a symbol before to counteract All for One's silent tyranny. With that gone, and with more competent heroes than ever, maybe it's time for you to step back and let the young ones take the helm. Izuku gazed up at the building in front of them. So, does every dorm hall look like a miniature of UA's main building? Or is this a special treat? Aizawa-sensei slapped a hand over his face as he let out a noise that Izuku recognized as a barely concealed snort. The hero cleared his throat and stood upright. Every dorm hall has the exact same design, though the resemblance to the main building was not intentional, I assure you. He walked up to one of the sets of double doors at the front and swung them open, and Wana took that as their cue to head inside. Set by the entrance was a lowered area with several cubbies on the right side, which the students instinctively stowed their shoes in. Upon further inspection, the cubbies were labeled with their seat numbers, which prompted a writhing tangle of limbs in order to make sure the correct shoes were in the correct spot. To the left of the entryway was a common room, featuring 2 couches of similar size set in front of a large flat-screen TV. Behind the common room was a decently sized kitchen, complete with a refrigerator, dishwasher, range, microwave, toaster oven, and several cabinets. There was a door visible in the wall of the common room placed right before the entrance to the kitchen, which revealed a courtyard in the center of the building. An elevator was visible right next to said door, along with another door that led to a flight of stairs. To the right of the entryway was an extension of the common room, which had several tables and chairs. Behind that was a room holding washing machines and dryers, along with cabinets that probably held all manner of cleaning supplies. Another door to the courtyard was set just outside the laundry room, and another elevator and flight of stairs next to that door. There was also a door set in the back of the laundry room that was labeled with Aizawa-sensei's name. Must lead to his room. Aizawa-sensei brought them into the west side common room and turned on the TV, which displayed 4 floor plans that seemed to match the upper floors of the building. Your luggage has been brought here ahead of time and has been placed in your assigned rooms. You are free to decorate your rooms as you see fit. Now, before you're dismissed for the afternoon, a few ground rules. You are required to be in your assigned dorm room at 10 o'clock every night. The exceptions are if you arrange a sleepover with friends and clear it with me beforehand. After 10 o'clock, you are not allowed to be loud enough that you can be heard at least 2 rooms away. Boys' rooms are to the west, girls' rooms are to the east. You cannot leave the building after 9 p.m. Any questions? Silence reigned, and he nodded. Good. Dismissed. I want you all unpacked by the time classes resume on Monday. Tamura raised an eyebrow as a scarecrow-thin blonde man walked into his cell. And who are you supposed to be? The man coughed into his fist. Apologies. My health isn't what it used to be. My name is Yagi Tashinori. I work as a business teacher at UA. Tamura grunted. Nifty. Why are you here? Yagi chuckled. Oh, I'm just the taxi. His shirt wiggled, and Tamura hummed with surprise as the principal of UA popped out. Greetings. Am I a dog, a mouse, or a bear? What's important is, I have an offer for you. Tamura huffed. Really? And here I thought the commission would insist on me being thrown in Tartarus for life. Nedzu chuckled into his paw. Well, I just so happen to know someone who is quite well versed in making powerful people listen to them. One quick phone call later, the commission was willing to hear me out. In any case, how would you like a second chance at a normal life? Tamura hummed. Depends. What kind of second chance? Nedzu strode forward and linked his paws together. The man you knew as sensei took you when you were young, and began raising you into the ways of villainy almost immediately. As such, you didn't have much of an opportunity to live your life normally. I'm offering to rectify that mistake. After a brief rehabilitation course with Ketsubutsu High School, you'll be allowed to walk free and live as you wish. Tamura raised an eyebrow. That's it? No other restrictions? I just do some time at a rehab program and I'm a free man. Nedzu let out a short bark of laughter. Well, there is a slight caveat in that you won't be allowed to become a villain again, but I think you've had quite enough of that. Tamura snorted. You've got that right. What about the rest of the league? Are they going to get second chances too? Nedzu smiled. Well, that all depends on if they accept. Naturally, I plan to make the offer to all of them, though I have my suspicions on how some of them will react. Well, all of them except for one. Tamura raised an eyebrow. And who would that be? Nedzu clasped his paws together. You see, we've hit a bit of a snag with Kurogiri. Immediately after All for One detonated, Kurogiri became unresponsive, exactly like the Nomu that you used at the USJ. Upon further examination, we've discovered that he shares many of the same traits as the Nomu, namely, containing the DNA of multiple people. We're operating under the assumption that his autonomy was achieved through the use of some form of mind control quirk, which became inactive upon All for One's death. However, he did react very briefly when Eraserhead, Present Mike, or Midnight entered his cell. As such, we'll be transporting him to UA in order to try and get a better idea of what his situation is. Tamura huffed. Good. If you ever find out, let me know. Yeah. Nedzu smiled. I believe that can be arranged. Izuku flopped onto the 2-seater couch in the common room and sighed deeply, sinking into the cushions. Who knew that unpacking could be so exhausting? Katsuki huffed as he sat down next to Izuku. Well, when you've got to unpack as much stuff as you brought, I wouldn't be surprised if you're ready to crash at any moment. Izuku cracked one eye open in a half-hearted glare at the blonde. What, are you saying I packed too much stuff? Katsuki snorted. Not even close. Too much would be about half again as much shit as you brought along, and even then, you'd still be leaving a good 50% of your stuff back at the apartment. How did you even fit all of that in your room when it's the same size as your dorm? Izuku grinned. Tetris. Katsuki groaned and grabbed the throw pillow on his side of the couch, immediately twisting and smacking Izuku in the face with it. Naturally, Izuku retaliated in kind, and the common room quickly turned into a pillow fight. At first, it was just the two of them, but the hero hopefuls quickly joined in. Kirishima and Kaminari took Katsuki's side, but the others were on Izuku's team. Just as it seemed that Katsuki was getting outnumbered 5-3, Shiro and Ishido jumped in to help his side out. The entire time, Ida was yelling something about proper behavior, but everyone tuned him out. Su was watching with interest, and Hagakure was clearly entranced by the ordeal. Satu, Shuji, and Fumikage were silent watchers, though the latter was clearly rooting for Izuku's side, going off of the small noises he made every time someone landed a hit. Ojiro's attention was ping-ponging back and forth, and he would occasionally comment on a good hit from either side. Aoyama simply sat in the kitchen and watched with stars in his eyes. After a good 10 minutes, Aizawa-sensei marched out from the laundry room and snagged Izuku and Katsuki in his capture scarf, bringing them under his sharp gaze as the others fell silent. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Izuku swallowed nervously. Getting comfortable, sir?" Aizawa-sensei stared down at him. A bead of sweat rolled down his neck. After a few tense seconds, the hero grunted. "You get a harder impact if you swing wider. Watch." In the blink of an eye, his capture scarf wrapped itself around a discarded pillow and swung it around, right into Shuji's face. A collective gasp went up, and the taller boy stood there silently for a few seconds. He started chuckling, and he grabbed 6 pillows from the floor around him. Immediately, there was a massive scramble to find an available weapon, and the pillow fight resumed in earnest. Hizashi frowned at the odd sounds coming from the first floor of as dorm hall. "It's only the first day, and something's already up? Shuta's probably gonna have a field day with expulsions once he shows up." He opened one of the doors, and was suddenly hit in the face by a flying pillow. The noises stopped, and he removed the pillow from his face to see all of frozen in place, pillows in hand. After a few seconds, Hizashi realized that Shoyuta was among the frozen. Hitoshi clamped to his waist. He couldn't help but grin and shift his grip on the pillow in his hand. "Oh, it's on now, kiddos. You've just challenged the master." The area exploded into motion, and Hizashi laughed wildly as he ducked and weaved around the swinging pillows and waving limbs. "Shoyuta, you sour grumpus. I knew it was a matter of time before you mentally adopted these kids." Inko glanced over as her phone dinged. She pulled herself out of her office chair and walked over to where it was sitting on her bedside table. Picking it up, her eyes widened when she saw that she'd received a text from Izuku. "Oh no, did something go wrong with the dorms already?" Nervously, she opened the text, mind filled with every possible disaster. However, as the words and attached image registered, the tension bled out of her shoulders as she sighed with relief. "Izuku, not even a day in and the place already feels like home. Aizawa-sensei might even be better than you." The image showed Izuku and his class laying in a giant pile in the dorm common room, pillows and feathers strewn about everywhere. Inko giggled to herself as she noticed Aizawa-san and Yamada-san trapped near the bottom of the pile underneath the students. In the photo, Izuku was laughing, and she wiped away a tear at the enormous smile on his face. "You've come so far." Summer break soon came to a close, and classes resumed. That Monday, Aizawa-sensei walked into the classroom and was met with complete silence. He nodded in satisfaction. "Good. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the training camp, the HPSC has made it mandatory for the first-year hero students at UA to attend the provisional license exam this September. In fact, after the events of Kamino, they've doubled down, citing the rise in criminal activity as a need for more heroes in the field. While UA would love nothing more than to take it slow with you Hellions, our hands are unfortunately tied." He scanned the class and nodded at the lack of complaining. "Right." In other news, Todoroki has disappeared. Izuku frowned. "When?" Aizawa-sensei sighed. "Apparently, his oldest sister brought him home with her, but after that we lost track of him, and we don't have any leads on where he might be. In any case, since he left, we had an open spot in the roster, and due to a lack of qualified or interested bodies in other courses, we had to get creative to fill the final seat." The door slammed open, and a stocky boy with slanted eyes walked in with a huge grin on his face. "Greetings, Class 1A of UA. I wasn't expecting us to meet each other like this. I hope to become a passionate hero alongside all of you." His hands smacked into his hips, and he dipped into a bow that sent his head slamming into the floor. Izuku immediately fell into a laughing fit, clutching at his sides and causing the rest of the class to exchange confused glances. Once he'd recovered, he stood up out of his seat and walked over, pulling the newcomer into a headlock. "Knew you'd show up eventually, Twister." The hero hopefuls let out various noises of recognition, and Katsuki started cackling. Aizawa-sensei sighed, before raising his head to address the others. 1A, this is Yurashi Inesa, a transfer student from Shiketsu. He had actually beaten Todoroki in the recommendations exam, but refused his offer. Due to his score, he was the first one we reached out to for potentially filling the missing seat. Yurashi, you've got the open seat behind Tokoyami, the one with the raven head. Once everyone was seated, Kyuka raised her hand and asked, "Sensei, how is Momo doing?" The hero winced. "Not much improvement. She's holding steady, but she hasn't shown any signs of consciousness yet. We're still holding out hope for Recovery Girl to find someone with her connections, so we're keeping Yaoyorozu's spot open for her. Unfortunately, we still haven't found a good solution for her state yet." The class fell silent. Izuku's smile melted off his face, and he clutched at his left arm. I should have said something. I knew something was off with Todoroki, but I didn't say anything out of fear that it might backfire on me. It's my fault that this happened. Aizawa-sensei clapped his hands together, drawing everyone's attention. Right? You have until the end of homeroom to get acquainted with your new classmate. Classes will resume as normal, though we are having a special guest for Foundational Heroics this afternoon. Dismissed. He walked out of the door, and the hero hopefuls were immediately crowded around Hirashi's desk. Izuku stepped forward with a grin and said, "Right, introductions. Midoriya Izuku, class rep and bush boss." Katsuki smirked. Bakugo Katsuki, vice rep and king explosion. Jiru Kyuka, totally jacked and Izuku's girlfriend. Ayama Hitoshi, Insomnicat. Uraraka Ochako, Newton's bane. Kudakuji Snow White. Kaminari Denki, Sparky Way. Kirishima Ijiru, Rock Riot. Hirashi grinned. Urashi Inesa, Mr. Twister. But you already knew that. He frowned. Wait, where's baby gremlin? Izuku smirked. Hatsume. She's in the support course, you'll probably meet her at lunchtime. She handles all of our costume and gear maintenance and upgrades. Top-notch quality. Fumikage coughed. Izuku, I believe the rest of us would like to get familiar with our new classmate. I am Tokoyami Fumikage. A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Urashi-kun. Urashi smiled. Great to meet you too, man. The morning classes went by in a blur. Urashi quickly made himself comfortable, throwing himself into the coursework with the same enthusiasm that he wielded during gaming sessions. He wasn't half bad, either, being on par with Kyuka academically. In addition, he was great at lifting the mood. He always had a funny line or a nice compliment ready, and he was more than willing to throw them out whenever someone got even the slightest bit down. He and Kirishima seemed to feed off each other's energy, and just being near them lifted Izuku's spirits. When lunchtime came, Hatsum took one look at him and immediately deduced his identity. Hey Twister, took you long enough to show up. How come you never checked in on Discord? Urashi laughed, setting his tray down and rubbing at the back of his neck. Believe me, I wanted to, but Shiketsu is super strict and doesn't like their students having outside contact or relationships. They're more like a military boot camp than a school, honestly. I'm glad that UA offered me a transfer between semesters. I was getting tired of how stiff the teachers were. Izuku frowned. So, how come you declined your offer to UA in the first place? Urashi's expression plummeted. See, I was really excited about getting recommended, but then I happened to be in the same group as Todoroki. I tried talking to him, but he coldly brushed me off. Normally, I would have ignored it, but I had a bad experience with Endeavor a few years before that. Katsuki scowled. Are you saying you assumed Icy Hot was as bad as his old man? Urashi shook his head vehemently. No, nothing like that. I just didn't trust myself to be nice to the guy. If I'd accepted, I didn't think I'd be able to look at him without seeing his dad and getting annoyed. Kyuka huffed. Well, if you'd accepted, he wouldn't have gotten in on recommendations. You watched him hijack that press conference near the end of last semester, right? Urashi nodded. Yeah, I doubt Endeavor would have been pleased if his masterpiece didn't pass the recommendations exam. I kind of felt sorry for him, having such an unpassionate hero for a dad. Izuku grunted. We've all agreed that Endeavor sucks. I honestly don't know how he's still active after the whole Todoroki snafu. Katsuki huffed. Simple. While people hate his guts, and for good reason, they can't deny how efficient he is. Like it or not, the guy puts away more criminals than any other hero. He'll probably drop below Maruko at the next ranking, since his popularity ratings tanked. Izuku sighed. God, I hope so. That man desperately needs a swift boot up the... As the bell rang to signal the start of afternoon classes, Aizawa-sensei walked into the classroom to the expectant stares of the class. Right, let's not waste time. Grab your costumes and get to Gym Gamma. Be sure to memorize the route, you'll be taking it a lot in the next few weeks. Took Urashi a few seconds to catch up to the others, but he fell into place alongside them quickly, and they were dressed and at the gym in only a couple minutes. As they filed through the large double doors, Aizawa-sensei nodded in satisfaction. Good. You've improved since the start of the year. In any case, you'll be spending your next few weeks of Foundational Heroics classes in this gym. He nodded to Cementos, who took that as his cue to step forward. While the USJ may be 13's pride and joy, Gym Gamma is my personal laboratory. The cement floor allows me to create varying platforms and terrain for different training exercises. In addition, Ectoplasm here will be able to provide you all with personal advisors and sparring partners. Both resources will be vital for your next assignment super moves. Izuku raised his hand. Sir, you mentioned a special guest. Aizawa-sensei sighed. Yes. He placed a hand by his ear and said, You can come in now. A side door swung open, and most of Class 1 shrieked as Shigaraki strode in. Ashido screeched, Villain! Izuku lightly smacked her across the back of the head. Calm down. Shigi defected after the Kamino incident. Shigaraki huffed. Don't call me Shigaraki. That was the name given to me by All for One. I don't want it anymore. I'm taking up my old username, Shimura Tenko. Izuku smirked. Alright then, Chimichanga. Shimura threw back his head and started cackling, and the class slowly relaxed their stances. Aizawa-sensei cleared his throat and announced. Initially, the plan was for Shimura to attend the rehab course at Ketsubutsu High. Unfortunately, they can only hold so many at a time, and their spots were already filled. As such, Shimura will be fulfilling his rehabilitation requirements at UA. Katsuki frowned. Don't villain rehab courses require that the subject stay on campus at all times? Where's the guy gonna sleep? Shimura chuckled. Well, policy dictates that I remain within easy grabbing distance of my parole officer, so I'm bunking with you brats. Don't worry. They stuck me on the second floor next to player 2. Cementos coughed into his fist. In any case, we were talking about your current assignment, yes? Aizawa-sensei nodded. Right. Pop quiz. What's a super move? Ida raised his hand. Sir, generally speaking, a super move is any technique that can be reliably used to end a fight quickly. The hero nodded. Good. Not all super moves are directly offensive, they come in various forms. The 4 most basic types are attack, defense, mobility, and restraint. Attack is the most common type. They're your Luna Falls, Canyon Cannons, etc. Defense is less common, seeing as limelights tend to prioritize offense over durability. Mobility is something like Ida's Recipro Burst. While the technique itself isn't a direct attack, the huge boost in speed is more than dangerous enough to be considered a super move. Lastly, restraint moves don't cause damage to your opponent, but still render them unable to continue fighting. A good example is Lacquered Chain Prison. Hitoshi raised his hand. You said that limelights prioritize offense over defense. What about underground heroes? Aizawa-sensei smirked. Good question. The main difference between Limelight and Underground is presentation. Limelight heroes call out the names of their techniques and are very flashy and eye-catching. On the flip side, Underground heroes don't name their techniques and focus on function over form. They do have specialized techniques, but we refer to them as finishers instead. Finishers don't have categories or names like super moves, but they do share some similarities. Most finishers you'll see involve restricting an opponent's movement, then taking them out while they're trapped. Izuku snapped his fingers. Like that move you pulled on All for One in Kamino. The hero coughed into his fist. Well, that was technically a variation involving being dropped from above by hawks, but yes. Shimura frowned. You know, I've been wondering, how were you in Kamino and at UA at the same time? Aizawa-sensei grinned. I wasn't. During second year, hero students are allowed to take an elective course in espionage and disguises. UA employs an underground hero for that class who happens to have a quirk that changes people's appearance, including himself. The Eraserhead, at the conference? That was him. Izuku frowned. How come he made himself look like he was run ragged? When I watched the conference from the bar, you looked like you'd gone a week without sleep. Aizawa-sensei huffed. Had to sell the illusion that I was beating myself up too badly to do anything. We thought it'd make it more of a surprise when I showed up at Kamino. Izuku nodded. Makes sense. But back to super moves. Following the logical deduction, I'm guessing we're going to be developing our own super moves and finishers to use in the provisional license exam. Aizawa-sensei smirked. Bingo! Super moves and finishers can make or break a fight in either direction, and both take quite a lot of time to devise and refine. I'm certain some of you have already started the basics of your own super moves, like Bakugu's AP shot. Work on refining those to the point that you can practically do them in your sleep. The rest of you start thinking about what potential super moves you could add to your own arsenals. Remember, a good hero is more than a one-trick pony. Now get to work, Hellspawn. Later that afternoon, after classes had let out, the hero hopefuls dragged Yurashi down to the support workshop. As Izuku swung the double doors open, he stepped to one side and caught Mei in one arm in a practiced maneuver. She pulled her goggles onto her forehead and grinned, her face covered in soot. Hey boss, didn't think you were scheduled for a tune-up today. What's the occasion? Izuku huffed warmly. Figured I'd give Yurashi an introduction to your work. Besides, his costume needs some upgrades. Mei wiped the soot off her face and grinned over at Yurashi, who was clutching his costume case. You heard the man. Gimme. Reluctantly, the teen let go of the case, watching as Mei connected a cord from her workbench monitor to a port on the case, which pulled up a set of blueprints on the screen. Izuku whistled in admiration. I don't think that was a thing before final exams. When did that happen? Mei grinned wider. Power Loader noticed how often you guys were coming here for costume adjustments, so he redesigned the cases to hold the blueprints for the costumes. Everyone's got monitors that can access those files, and we can make changes in the files themselves before making the actual costume. It's great. She turned back to the screen and frowned. Yeesh, what are the costume designers at Shiketsu thinking? This thing's super bulky, and there's basically no head protection. Yurashi rubbed at his neck. Well, I originally wanted to have something like an aviator's cap in there, but my support technician vetoed that, since we're required to wear our uniform caps in our hero costumes. I did say that Shiketsu is a lot more strict than UA. Izuku hummed. So, you're going for an aviator theme? Makes sense, considering your quirk. What is it, by the way? Yurashi beamed. My quirk lets me control the air around me. I can whip up huge gusts for attack, defense, and even speed. With the help of that apparatus on my back, I can even fly. Izuku rubbed at his chin. What about fine control? Yurashi tapped at his chin for a couple seconds. I'm not sure about specifics, but during my semester exam at Shiketsu, I could use my quirk to lift up a pile of rubble and sort it into piles of different materials in midair. I don't know if I could do something like sending a gust under a door and opening it from the other side, though, but I want to, Katsuki hummed. Okay, important question. Do you prefer raw output or precision? My fighting style involves overwhelming an opponent with raw power, so my costume helps to increase my output. Izuku likes to dodge an opponent's attacks, then strike as hard as he can while they're open. So his outfit is designed to be protective without sacrificing mobility. Your costume is supposed to amplify your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. Yurashi frowned and brought his hand up to his chin in thought. After a few seconds, he glanced up and nodded. I tend to prioritize using my quirk as either a method for trapping an opponent, or as a hold on something more physical. In my experience, wind on its own isn't very strong in terms of power output, especially when an opponent is low to the ground. My usual tactics involve blowing someone into the air or picking something up with my wind to smack them with it. Izuku hummed. So why all the exhaust ports? Yurashi sighed. When I first had my costume designed, I didn't really have a style solidified yet, so I basically left it up to my support technician. I guess they figured I'd go for higher output based on my personality. Mei huffed. So, we're basically going for a complete overhaul? Yurashi shrugged. If that helps, I don't see why not. You're the expert here, not me. She grinned. You're damn right, I'm the expert here. She tapped on the screen and swiped the blueprints into a trash can in the bottom right corner, then cracked her knuckles. So, first things first, we need a basic shape for the costume. How mobile are you in a fight? Yurashi frowned. It varies, really. Against a more powerful opponent, I tend to stay away and blow them from a distance, but if I'm facing someone small and quick, I'm darting around the area trying to find a good direction of attack. So, something variable, I guess. Mei hummed. Okay, so definitely a jumpsuit for the base, since they're the most flexible, literally and figuratively. Now, if you want to be mobile, giving yourself a third dimension is your best bet. You really liked the jetpack thing on your old costume, right? Yurashi nodded. Definitely. I can't really get air moving that well on my own, but I can redirect pre-existing wind currents and keep them going really easily. Since wind currents are stronger higher up, I want to be as high as possible in order to get the most effect out of my quirk. Mei rubbed at her chin, before launching into a series of taps and swipes on the monitor. When she backed away, the screen displayed an image of a mannequin with some sort of device on the back. The general shape was a wide obelisk cut in half through the top vertex, with the cut being at right angles to the short sides. Set in the base were two cylindrical holes that ended near the shoulder blades. Inside the holes were small fans that resembled helicopter rotors, and the blades were angled so that the two rotors would spin in opposite directions. There were also two angled holes on the back that led straight to the topmost blades. Yurashi frowned. What's that supposed to do? I don't see a power supply anywhere. Mei grinned. That's the beauty of it, you're the power supply. She swiped her finger across the screen, which pulled up an internal view of the device. She pointed at the diagram, which showed that the blades near the top were different from the others along the shaft. See how these blades here are perpendicular to the axle. The idea is you get these top blades spinning through these holes on the back, which in turn spins the angled blades that add some thrust. Of course, this is only a supplement, so you're going to need to lift yourself directly with your quirk a bit, but I'm sure you can handle it. Yurashi hummed and pointed at the screen, in between the two shafts. What if you added an empty cone in the middle? There'd be a lot of surface area in there for the wind to push on, so if I pushed a gust in there in addition to the spirals on the sides, it'd be more effective. Mei snapped her fingers. You're right, that might work. She quickly tapped away at the screen, inserting a hollow tube into the center of the pack. And hey, maybe we could do the same for the backs of your legs. More tubes, more thrust, right? Yurashi frowned. Dunno. Haven't tested how many wind streams I can keep up at the same time. Besides, I still kinda need at least one solid gust active for a long-ranged attack. Can't expect to be able to fly in and tackle my opponent every time. Izuku grinned. True. Sounds like we've got a lot of experimenting to do tomorrow during training. Yurashi leaned back and laughed heartily. You betcha. 5 weeks later, Izuku stared up at the massive stadium in front of them as Class 1A filed off of the bus. Wow. And here I thought UA had a monopoly on Plus Ultra. This thing is bigger than the sports festival stadium. Maybe even bigger than the USJ. Yurashi walked up next to him. Oh yeah. I've never been to the USJ. I've heard it's really cool. Shame your first time with it had to be ruined by the villain attack. Izuku shrugged. We'll probably get a better look at its features next year, once the attack isn't fresh in our minds. He turned on his heel to address the class. Right? Wanna listen up? His chest swelled with pride as everyone stopped talking and turned to face him. Remember, while you're here, your behavior represents UA, so don't do anything too embarrassing. Looking at you, Sparky. Kaminari blushed deeply and rubbed at the back of his neck. Still, so long as you don't get into anything stupid, you should be fine. Now, let's go take this on with everything we've got. Plus Ultra. The class roared in agreement, only to pause when loud chuckling made itself heard. Wow, you've got a hearty batch this year. Haracer? Aizawa-sensei groaned as a woman wearing a dark blue corset with baggy green and orange striped shorts walked up. Izuku grinned as he recognized Ms. Joke. one of the few hybrid heroes in Japan, working both in the limelight and underground. She walked up to him and immediately said, "Come on, let's get married." Hitoshi choked on his own spit and had to be resuscitated by a very worried Kaminari. The rest of the class all sent her confused glances. While the hero hopefuls had already known about Aizawa-sensei's marriage to present Mike, they kept quiet about it initially out of respect for the two heroes' privacy. However, after the blonde kept showing up night after night, the rest of the class was getting suspicious. 2 quick ambushes and 1 interrogation later, the entire class was in on their relationship. Yurashi was informed shortly after he moved into the dorms. So to hear Ms. Joke proposing to an already married man, well, it was concerning. After a few awkward seconds of silence, Aizawa-sensei huffed warmly and crossed his arms. "Relax, Hellspawn. It's just a running joke between the two of us." The heroine dropped her huge smile and adopted a much more genuine grin. "Yeah, we've been friends for years. Initially, I had considered a relationship with this dolt, but then I met my current wife and realized how massively gay I was. It was around that time that this idiot finally got married, too. We've got a private chat where we gush about our partners." She quickly switched her gaze to Hitoshi. "Don't tell Mike." The purple-haired teen merely grinned, almost an exact replica of Aizawa-sensei's logical ruse face. "I haven't the slightest clue what you're talking about. Why would I waste such prime blackmail material?" Ms. Joke snorted. "Adopted or not, you're definitely Eraser's kid." She scanned the class and frowned. "You only expelled 1 student this year? You're getting soft." Aizawa-sensei coughed into his fist. "Actually, I expelled 1 at the start of the year who Hitoshi replaced. Yurashi replaced Todoroki, and the 20th is currently in a coma. We don't like to talk about it." The heroine winced. "Yikes, that sucks. Still, to be able to face this exam with everything you've got, even with all that, takes guts. I'm impressed. See if you can impress me some more out there during the exam itself." "Yeah." Izuku grinned. "Plus ultra, remember? I don't intend to disappoint." Class 1 streamed out of the changing rooms, now clad in their hero costumes. The various HPSC employees standing by directed them to the auditorium, which was quickly filling up with 2nd and 3rd-year students from other schools around the country. Izuku glanced around the massive room and whistled in admiration. "Damn, it's almost twice as big as the entrance exam auditorium, and they're still struggling to fit everyone. Just goes to show how much competition there is out there." Hitoshi nodded. "UA may be the most well-known, but it definitely isn't the only producer of great heroes. See those guys in the ninja outfits over there? They're from Seijin High School, the alma mater of Edgeshot. And those girls in the matching white uniforms are from CI Academy, whose headmistress is said to rival Netsu himself in intelligence." Katsuki grunted, checking over his gauntlets and fiddling with his new visor. "Big names don't mean shit. Let their abilities speak for them, not their reputation." Izuku huffed, checking through his equipment and making sure it was all in working order. "You said it." The hero hopefuls had been working with Mei a lot in the weeks preceding the exam. Izuku's jumpsuit now sported pouches on the upper arms for more storage. Katsuki held flashbang-shaped capsules on his belt for carrying medical supplies, along with a small tank of drinking water on his back. Kyuko wore earrings shaped like metal balls, which she could plug her jacks into and detach them from the piercing to use as tiny flails. She also wielded her new combat guitar, made of a carbon steel alloy with tungsten strings and embedded speakers. Ochako's old high heels were replaced with boots similar to 13th's, matching her costume's color scheme and containing gyroscopes to orient her in midair, along with gauntlets that contained 30-meter grappling hooks. Kaminari's wrists sported tiny crossbows that would launch copper spikes, which would then draw his electricity into a focus point at long range. Kirishima wore a shirt keyed to his DNA, meaning that hardening wouldn't tear it, so he had a measure of defense without his quirk activated. Kuta's costume now had pockets for throat lozenges and various types of animal food. Hitoshi's mask could alter his voice to sound like someone else, and even helped him throw it around so that it sounded like it was coming from different directions. Of course, the biggest change was Yurashi's costume. Gone were the bulky pipes, massive cloak, and enormous left glove. He wore a dark blue jumpsuit over his body, made from the same material as everyone else's costumes. On his chest, he wore an aviator jacket, made of the same material as Izuku's vest and sporting several pockets for medical supplies. His head was covered by a standard pilot's helmet, complete with a tube leading to an oxygen tank that sat behind his shoulder blades. He also wore boots that had extending anchors and gloves that let him grip to rough surfaces easily, along with elbow and knee pads. In addition, his jetpack had its point cut off partway down the slope to leave a shelf for his oxygen tank, and it now sported tiny aesthetic wings on the sides. Once the auditorium had reached its max capacity, the doors slid shut as a man with messy beige hair walked up to the microphone on the stage up front. "Hello, and welcome to the official provisional license exam. My name is Mara Yakumaru, and I'm the representative from the HPSC in charge of this event. Now, due to recent events, we've decided to make the passing requirements a little more strict. To be blunt, only 100 of you will pass this exam. At most. For reference, there are 1540 of you taking the exam today. So you'll need to really go above and beyond if you want to pass this time." The auditorium devolved into mutters, and Izuku frowned. "That's only a 6.5% chance of just getting through the first half. We're really gonna need our A-game here. Mara clapped his hands, grabbing everyone's attention. Right? Let's get this over with so I can go back to sleep. This exam will be divided into 2 sections. The first half will be a kind of elimination round to weed out the best from the pack. He pulled out 2 objects, an orange ball and some kind of black disc with a silver rim. You will each be given 6 balls and 3 targets. You must place the targets somewhere visible on your person. If a person's 3 targets are hit, they're eliminated. Your goal is to eliminate 2 other opponents. The first 100 students to meet this requirement will move on to the second half of the exam. He touched the ball to the target and it lit up red. Once the 100th person passes, the first half will end. Several HPSC employees began moving through the crowd, handing out balls and targets to each person. Izuku pondered the situation for a bit, before placing his targets in an inverted triangle in the center of his chest. Katsuki glanced over at his placement and raised an eyebrow. Aren't they easier to hit there? Izuku shook his head. They're actually the hardest to hit there. If they're on my chest, then anyone trying to hit them will have to attack from the front, where I can see them coming. If I placed one on my back, that'd just be a free hit for anyone who can sneak up on me. Katsuki hummed, before nodding. Makes sense. He placed his targets on his chest in a triangle pattern. The rest of the class quickly followed suit, arranging their targets on their chests in various formations. Once all of the balls and targets had been distributed, Mara announced, "Now, I believe you all have different terrains that you prefer. So, we've decided to provide a range of scenery." The ground rumbled, and the crowd gasped as the roof and walls fell away to reveal the sprawling arena around them. Izuku spotted a raised highway, a sprawling industrial complex similar to Ground Gamma, a flowing waterfall rimmed by a forest, a mountain range with a spiraling path up the tallest peak, a collection of office buildings, and a street lined with shops. You'll have 10 minutes to fan out and prepare before the exam begins in earnest. Now move quickly so I can get back to sleep. Immediately, the other schools began to spread out among the massive area. Izuku put his fingers in his mouth and let out a piercing whistle, then shouted, "Wanna huddle up?" Immediately, his classmates formed a tight circle around him. All right, the name of the game here is teamwork. People are going to be likely to ally themselves with people from their own school, since they're more likely to know each other's abilities. Katsuki nodded. Makes sense. Izuku held up a finger. Another thing, we're most likely prime targets for anyone else. Ishido frowned. Why? What did we do to them? Yarashi huffed. It's because of the sports festival. Every year, UA students have their capabilities broadcasted to the world. And while they won't know your names or exact quirks this year, they're likely smart enough to be able to connect costumes to names and names to powers. Izuku nodded. Exactly. So we need to focus on what we've done since the sports festival. Look through your available moves and figure out which ones they won't expect. And most importantly, stick together. I would suggest moving as a class, but we've all got such different styles that wouldn't work out well. So, I'm thinking we'll split into specialized teams. Hitoshi, Fumikage, and Hagakure. You 3 are our stealthiest group. Stick together and attack from the shadows. Fumikage nodded. Understood. Embrace the darkness, but do not lose sight of the light. Ida, Ochako, Tsu, and Siro, you're our most mobile. Get in, hit fast and hard, and get out before they notice you. Ochako grinned and smacked her fist into her palm. They won't know what hit em. Ojiro, Satu, and Shuji are our big guns. You guys probably hit the hardest out of our class. Aoyama, Ashido, and Kuda, you go with them to provide long-range support. Kuda signed. I'll do my best. Yarashi, I think you're one of the only ones in the class who can do this solo. You're the wild card, since you weren't there for the festival. Nobody's going to know what you can do. Get out there and kick ass. Yarashi grinned. You got it. All right, Kaminari, Kirishima, Kyuka, Katsuki, you're with me. We know each other's fighting styles the best out of anyone in the class. Teamwork is going to be our biggest advantage. Katsuki grinned and slammed a fist into his palm, letting off a quick explosion. You fucking know it. Izuku nodded and scanned the class. All right, we all know our assignments. Now let's get out there and kick some ass. Right. Shoyuta grinned with pride as the blob that was his class split up into smaller groups, all running in different directions. From what he could tell, they'd split into smaller groups based on similar fighting styles, and Yarashi had headed off on his own. Smart thinking. Emi huffed from her seat next to him. You'd think they'd stick closer together in a bigger group. Strength in numbers and all that. Shoyuta grunted. They're going to be outnumbered no matter what they do, so they're splitting up the attention on them in order to make it more manageable. It's easier to fight off a combined attack from a single direction than several combined attacks from multiple directions. Emi frowned. So how come the one kid went off on his own? Is he cocky enough to think he can go solo? Shoyuta crossed his arms. Considering he's the wild card of the class, it's not exactly unfounded. He's the transfer student from Shiketsu. Not only does he have the element of surprise, but he's probably more powerful than just about any other single student in the class. Emi hummed and scanned the field. I guess that's fair. You didn't tell your class about the crushing of UA. Did you? Shoyuta snorted. Didn't need to. Even if Yarashi hadn't transferred to UA, the class rep probably would have figured it out regardless. Emmy raised an eyebrow at him. You seem awfully confident in your class abilities. What happened to the eraser that constantly downplayed his students' strengths? Shoyuta grunted. They're a good bunch. They actually lift each other up instead of just competing with each other all the time. Teamwork is one of their biggest strengths, and they're closer than any of my other classes from the experiences they've been through. Emmy gasped and held a hand over her heart. Why, eraser? If I didn't know you any better, I'd say you're fond of these brats. Shoyuta blushed and turned away, feeling his face grow hot. I might have gotten attached. Blame Mike. He's the one who infected me with his infuriating optimism. Emmy giggled. I might have to send him a gift basket. Is he still hooked on banana mochi? Shoyuta grinned. Actually, he's moved on to grape. We've recently gained an appreciation for the color purple. Izuku stared up at the students surrounding his team on the cliffs above. The one in front with bushy black hair shouted. Everyone knows it's logical to team up with your own class. Strength in numbers. UA. Izuku huffed. You seem to be laboring under the delusion that we're going to, what was the phrase? Come quietly. Well, I can tell you this. We have no intention of failing this exam. The blonde girl standing near him, clearly a woman of culture, shouted. Enough of this. Take them. As the rest of her class glanced at her in confusion, Izuku grinned and equipped the masked hammer ability, sending up a tornado of fire as a distraction, drawing the enemy's attention as his group split up. Better go easy on her. Gotta respect a fellow nerd. Fumikage tapped on his leg in Morse code, sending a message to his two teammates as he stared up at the collection of Seijin High School students standing on the pipes above him. The one in front, dressed in red, called, You must be pretty cocky if you're taking us all on by yourself. Kurayami of 1A. Fumikage grunted. I take it you watched the sports festival. The red student huffed. Even if you're a UA student, you're still just a first year. There's no way you can hope to match an entire class with your own power. Fumikage chuckled. True. In a scenario such as this, I would not have a chance of succeeding on my own. The student in red laughed. So you admit that dash. Fumikage cut him off. Which is why it's a good thing that I'm not on my own. The red student paused. What? Suddenly, two of his classmates standing behind him were flung through the air by an unseen force, just as Ayama's capture scarf flung out and slammed another 3 students into each other, effectively taking them out of commission. The remaining half paused, still unsure of what was going on, and Fumikage moved. Abyssal shroud. Dark shadow covered his head and forearms like a second skin, and he leaped off the ground, streaking through the air towards the clear leader of the group. Mustering a fake tone of confidence, the Seijin student shouted, Gather yourselves. It's just 5 on 3. Fumikage grinned, aware of how unsettling such an expression was when one had a raven's head. Not quite. Dark Shadow's eyes turned red, and their body expanded to massive proportions. Their shadowy form grew to cover not only Fumicage's arms, but also his legs. In only a few seconds, he was implanted in the center of a massive shadowy figure, complete with a raven's head and massive claws. Avatar of Tsukuyami. Kuji frowned as the pigeon he'd summoned gave its report. He reached into one of his pouches and pulled out a handful of birdseed, glancing over at his teammates as it began to feed. It says that there are several people on the highway, but only one of them looks normal. The rest are changed, it said. It was too disturbed to properly describe them. Shuji hummed, turning a hand into an ear and pressing it against a nearby support pillar. I'm definitely hearing multiple heartbeats. A lot of them are elevated like they're in a state of panic. But I'm not hearing any screaming, which has me concerned. Kuji glanced back down at the pigeon. It looked up at him and cooed, having finished the handful of birdseed. Fly away. I don't want you to get caught in whatever might happen. The pigeon trilled and flapped away, and Kuda knelt on the ground, laying one hand on the tarmac. He whistled, and a line of ants marched out of a hill, falling into formation at his feet. Ashido shivered. Gonna take me a while to get used to you doing that. Did your buddies have to help you get over your fear during the summer camp? The rest of the group sent various expressions her way as Kuji spelled out his instructions. The pink-skinned girl huffed and crossed her arms. What? I get that it's really useful, but it's still kind of weird to see a bunch of ants march out of an anthill and line up in rows. The ants started crawling up a pillar, and Kuji stood up, dusting his knees off. It's all right. I understand that not everyone has the same perspective on bugs. That kind of behavior is odd to see from insects, even if ants are the most predisposed to marching in file. Ashido nodded. Right? So, what did you tell them to do? They'll find the one person up there with the normal heartbeat, then form a ring underneath his feet on the underside of the highway. There should be enough natural lighting for them to be visible. Once I give the signal, I want you to hit that spot with your most corrosive acid. Though please try not to hit the ants. Ashido grinned sheepishly. I'll try my best. What's the signal? Kuji chuckled. You'll know it when you hear it. He moved towards the service ladder, motioning for Ojiro and Aoyama to follow him. The 3 of them quickly climbed up onto the highway, coming face to face with a teen wearing a shiketsu cap and surrounded by several balls of flesh. The teen scowled at them and announced, And so, 3 more maggots crawl into my domain. Do you have the power to rise and become the best of the best? Or will you sully the reputation of the great with your incompetence? Let us not wait until you graduate to find out. Ojiro huffed. What the heck are you going on about? Kuji's senses tingled, and he ducked as something flew in from behind and slammed into Ojiro, picking the boy up and compressing him into a ball of flesh, eyes, hair, and clothing, not unlike the other forms on the road. Ojiro was dropped into the Shiketsu student's waiting right hand, as 5 fleshy globs floated in midair behind him. The teen huffed. Good reflexes, I suppose, but pure instinct will not be enough. Aoyama went pale. What are you doing, monsieur? Surely, you could have passed on your own after trapping a mere 2 other students. Non, the other teen scoffed. This is not about simply passing or failing the exam. I do not trust the examiners to uphold the high standards that should come with heroism, so I am taking it upon myself to weed out those who do not fit the qualifications. Kuji frowned and signed. And why do you think that you know what those qualifications are? The Shiketsu student tilted his head. If you wish to speak to me, use words, not meaningless gestures. Aoyama gasped and placed a hand over his heart. Mon ami, surely, you have heard of sign language. The other teen huffed. If such a thing were to exist, it would not be necessary for me to learn it. After all, why would a prestigious institution such as UA allow a lesser student to walk its halls? Surely all UA students are capable of speech. Kuji scowled. That's rather rude. Just because someone can't talk doesn't mean they can't be a hero. The boy huffed again. I said, if you wish to speak to me, use your words. Your sign language, as you call it, means nothing to me. Kuji sighed. I'll give you one more chance to end this peacefully. Otherwise, this might get rough. The teen scowled, the balls of flesh in midair tensing. Fine. If you will insist on this meaningless endeavor, then I will end this quickly. Then your companion and I can have an intellectual conversation, freak. Then again, with his ridiculous accent, I doubt I could understand him. Anyway, the balls of flesh shot forward, and Kuji shouted, Don't say I didn't warn you. On cue, the road underneath the student's feet melted, and he let out a high-pitched scream as he fell to the road below. There was a loud smack, and the people on the road began shifting, growing, and unfurling. Kuji walked forward and glanced through the newly formed hole in the road. Ashido grinned back up at him, pointing to where Shuji and Satu were standing over the Shiketsu student's prone form, looking quite angry. Shuji heard the whole thing and related to us. We don't like this guy very much. How's the situation up there? Kuji glanced around as the other students started to recover from their transformation. Not good. The sooner you can get up here, the better. We need to fill in the numbers gap. Ochako raised a hand to her helmet, activating her comms system. Guys, be careful. I just took out a sniper on this rooftop. There are probably a lot more students waiting inside. Ida responded, Thank you for the warning, Uravity. We will do this quickly and efficiently. It would be appreciated if you could join us when you can. Ochako hummed, glancing over at the side of the building opposite where her group was entering. I might be busy ambushing them. They're currently entering the building on the opposite end. Send Froppy around the outside a couple floors up for surveillance. Ciro sarcastically whined. What, you don't think I can do surveillance? I'm hurt, Uravity. Shako snorted. You know damn well what I meant, Cellophane. Now shut up and move in with ignition. Roger that. Sue croaked. I'm in position, Caro. They're set up by the elevators, which are close to the side of the building. There's a window looking into the hallway connecting the 2 sides, and I've got a good view of the back of this girl who seems to be the leader. I'll crawl a floor up and decamouflage to let you know which side, Uravity. Ochako grinned and cracked her knuckles. All right, let's do this. Inesa grinned widely as his wind snatched the balls from the crowd of people on the streets below. I'll be taking those. One of them shouted, Hey, give those back. We need those to pass this exam. Several of the others started nodding in angry agreement, and the feeling spread until the entire crowd was yelling up at him. He soaked in the noise like a sponge, letting it grow until it reached a fever pitch. Eventually, he called out, Man, you're all so passionate. I love passionate heroes, you know. So as a gift, I'll give you your balls back. Here, see if you can catch them. With a swipe of his right hand, the whirling tornado of balls was sent streaking through the street below, slamming into target after target. In only a few seconds, he'd eliminated the entire street of people. As he basked in his achievement, the HPSC guy shouted, Wait, one person just eliminated 120 people all at once. His targets lit up blue, and an automated voice said, You have passed the first half of the exam. Please proceed to the waiting room at the edge of the arena. Inesa chuckled and swirled the wind into his pack, sending him speeding through the air towards the large room set into a wall of the arena. As he passed over the now-destroyed mountain range, he glanced down and grinned at the sight of a familiar uniform. The wind stopped, and he dropped to the ground right behind the familiar face. Her targets lit up blue. Hey, Kami-senpai. Wasn't expecting to run into you here. The Shiketsu upperclassman turned to face him with a grin. Yoa bro, been a hot minute. Totes yeet that we found each other. Looks like you're doing high-key great at UA, Brozef. Inesa snorted. Still as hard to understand as ever, I see. And that's a wrap on the final part. We've reached the end of this incredible journey, but don't worry. You can still catch up on all the earlier chapters by heading over to the playlist. It's been such a thrill sharing this story with you, and I'm so grateful for your support along the way. A huge shout out to the author for creating such an amazing experience. If you haven't already, please make sure to show them some love by supporting their work. It truly means the world. But don't go too far, because there's more to come. I'll be back with fresh, exciting content soon. Thanks for being so awesome and for being a part of this journey. You all rock.